Organization of the WebLEM. The organization, as I said, down the left-hand side, you've got a tree structure here, and it's pretty much in alphabetical order. For instance, you know, if you're looking for something in the fitting section, obviously you would go into the fittings, and then by material, carbon steel, and then whether the end connection is butt weld or threaded or whatever, and then right on down to the table. So that's how the structure of it is done. Let's talk a little bit about the development of the WebLEM. Does everybody remember the big thick yellow book? I mean, that's what we used to have, right? And it was actually pretty funny because we would go to our committee meetings and Tim would complain every time about having to lug around this big old book. You know, so it was you know, through his efforts that we did this and anyway, so I want to talk about the history of the WebLEM just a little bit here. I was going to read this narrative. This goes back to 1968 when it was actually created, when we created the WebLEM. So in April of 1968, at the MCA's annual convention in Los Angeles, California, the board of directors established a committee to prepare labor unit manual for the mechanical contracting industry. Working over a period of 2 years, the committee developed this manual to fill the need for reference documents on labor man hours for pipe, valves, fittings, specialties, and equipment. In this manual, which is the best source of information of the subject, because it's an MCA manual, right? It's got to be the best, right? Okay. It also serves to establish a basic mode of communication for the evaluation and consideration of concepts with regards to estimating in the mechanical contracting industry. For instance, the committee agreed that a labor unit for the purpose of this manual would be expressed in the terms of man hours to install a unit of material, such as a foot of pipe, or an individual item such as a fitting or a valve. So that was kind of the basis behind what they used to come up with the manual, the LEM together. It was created by a committee of contractors, prepared from a contractor's point of view. So, you know, it was certainly with the feedback of contractors and their information that the guidelines were used for this. Labor units were developed from a formula which were reviewed and proven over time. So we do have two different formulas that we use. One of them is for pipe, and the other formula is basically for everything else. So the great thing is it provides consistency for all of the labor units, so everything flows through this formula. The LEM committee is a source for contractors' questions and comments on labor units. So as I said, if you got any questions, you know, you can always submit them in through that email link there. And the greatest thing about it is it provides a consistent and methodical method of estimating. So if there's one thing I can say is it certainly brings consistency to the estimating because of the numbers and the way that they were formulated. So let's talk about a definition of a labor unit a second. So the definition, this is what we define the labor unit is. It's an expression in terms of man hours required to install a unit of pipe, or a unit of material such as a foot of pipe, an individual item such as a fitting or a valve, a specialty item, or a piece of equipment. One thing to note is with the WebLEM's approach, everything in there has to have labor on it. So some things can't have labor and some things need labor. Everything need weed labor widgets. Okay, so that's something that you really need to think about to make sure, you know, when you're doing an estimate is everything gets labored. Some of the components that make up an element of our labor unit is some of these items that are listed here. So the formula that I spoke about is an empirical formula that we use, the two different ones. They all use the components that are listed here on the screen, which are, it has material handling in it, which was you're receiving, unloading, stockpiling, or distributing it around the job site. The joining method, and of the formula, the biggest component of the formula is the joining method, how this thing goes together. So it gets butt welded together. That's going to be the bulk of the labor unit. Second to that is going to be the weight of the thing to get it installed. Okay, so those are the two largest components of the actual formula or value of the unit itself. So again, we do take in consideration of how it is joined, where the type of the connection, the number of connections that are around it. We also take into account normal pressure testing. So normal is defined as 1.5 times operating pressure. Anything above that, you need a 500-pound hydro. Well, you need to add a little bit more labor, although I would probably argue that it doesn't take much more to do a 500-pound. But anything normal pressure testing is 125 pound or 1.5 times operating. And then the installing or erecting, so getting it up in place once it's done. Obviously, the weight of that item is a very large component of that.
If you read the basic assumptions, I think it says within 200 feet of its final location. So when we say material handling, that doesn't mean that you can be a mile away and the labor unit accounts for that. It's based on the material moving no more than 200 feet.
And now, one of the things that, like Tim was saying, is it does say 200 feet, but you know, sometimes that's not realistic that everything is within 200 feet. So basically, you know, the way your company operates, where do you normally have your stockpile of your material? And that's going to be part of your productivity factor, if you will. And then just recognize that, you know, if the laydown area is a long ways away, that you're going to have to do some type of a correction for that, right?